True to his word, however, Soren strapped Tristan to a plough the next day and had him drag the plough for several hours. He was unrelenting, savagely beating and snapping the whip over the back of the prince. Yet after completing 3 rows he collapsed, unable to move any more. While he was on the ground, the man began to beat him to a pulp. In the meantime, a strange, ethereal voice whispered in his ear, "I am the spirit of the Ankh. Have faith, and I shall deliver you from your desperate situation." With this, despite being ruthlessly beaten, hope sprang once again within the prince. The spirit had taken pity on the enslaved boy and decided to aid him with his strength. Refreshed, he was able to easily plow the entire field, accomplishing a feat that no human could do unaided. Soren was very suspicious. It could do nothing. So once again, the prince dined with the pigs, carrying on through the night, clinging to the hope that the strange being that spoke to him would keep his word. Like the previous night, his captor announced his task for the next day. He would be gathering every strand of hay in the second field into bales. The next morning, Tristan found himself on the second field, slowly gathering each stalk in a plot that could easily be larger than the entire castle grounds. Once again, he was not performing to the standard of the evil man. Tristan became worried. "I've been abandoned," he thought. He snapped out of it, though, and hoped that the benevolent spirit would aid him once again. Just like that, the spirit gave him speed and more dexterous hands with which to gather all of the stalks. By the end of the day, every strand was baled, and the older man was pleased. For the final night, the man decreed that he would be clearing the third field of livestock droppings. The animals must have room to gallop and graze. Before he shut his eyes, Tristan once again thought about the kindly spirit and the assistance it had given him. "All I need is one more day," he thought. The next day, Prince nearly fainted at the sight of his approaching task. This was clearly the greatest of all the fields in size. The castle grounds could easily fit 5 times within this space. Enough piles covered the field so that no square foot was empty. To complete this, he was supposed to dig a great ditch, fill it with the gathered material, and then cover it up again. As he started, he could hardly move from the smell, making it slow work. Since the day was almost halfway through with the ditch only part way dug, Tristan once again called upon the spirit. For his faith, the spirit allowed him the use of all of his previous abilities, as well as the resistance to the smell. And so, with his great strength, he dug up the ditch, and with the speed he could move it quickly to the ditch. In this way, Tristan was able to complete his final task. Soren approached with the setting sun and was pleased. Unlike his expectations of freedom, however, Tristan was thrown back into the pen. "Even after my hard work, I will surely die here." The old man again addressed his captive. "You have succeeded in your appointed tasks. However, I cannot let you leave this farm. I never had any plans of actually allowing you to leave. Your father secured that fate for you. Besides, your work is too valuable to me. I also enjoy that Prince Tristan, having been fed with a corrupt silver spoon, is now being fed with the pigs." "We had a deal, Soren," said Tristan. "You cannot go back on your word." Soren gave a sinister laugh and then said, "I will have more work for you tomorrow." With that, he returned to his house, eagerly planning the next day. Now is the time to make a note on the spirit that lives in the very amulet that Tristan stole. The amulet, crafted by the Egyptians, had not been seen for thousands of years. Because the spirit was so grateful to Mr. King for freeing it, it aided him in the crafting of his empire. The spirit was also the patron of thieves, and so valued those who took it by force. Soren, in his younger years, was a very adept adventurer, historian, and thief, and at one time a good person. In a similar manner to Tristan, Soren also was driven to steal this amulet from him. In response to his need to exact revenge, the spirit took pity on him, allowing his own magic to use in its vicinity. Later on, Soren feared his dependence on a magical creature, and so used the power to channel the magic into a new source, with the amulet only nearby for safekeeping. During the night, however, the spirit decided it had had enough of the evil man. The man's evil treatment of the prince disgusted it. Noticing Tristan's good character, it appeared to him and broke the chain with which he was imprisoned. To the boy, the spirit took the shape of a human, yet it was half the size and floated above the ground. It was a pale bluish color with the impression of a faint aura about it. The prince could immediately tell that it was not human. It began, "Soren no longer deserves my power. He was once spurned by your father, and so turned to me for aid. But by reneging on your deal, he is no longer in the right, and has shown he is indeed an evil man. I wish to aid you alone now, for I believe you have atoned for your crime. But you must first retrieve my amulet, then I will bind myself to you." "How am I to do such a thing?" asked Tristan. "He is a magician, and must surely have an impenetrable defense in store for me." "You are right, but he is unaware of my plans," it replied. "By cutting off my power source, his backup magic is gone. I cannot hold it off for long, though. Too long without my power will kill me. If he discovers you, then he will still be a very dangerous foe. One more thing. The amulet is on his mantle above the bed." With that, Tristan stole into the house. He crept along the side of the walls, favoring the shadows. "I am the knight," he thought. He had accomplished a similar feat before, while sneaking past the bodyguards after bedtime. He thought back to that with a smile, yet immediately focused. He needed it for this. The stakes were so much higher. As he reached the bedroom, he scanned the room for any traps. So far, none were seen. He figured they were mostly magical, and so thanked the spirit silently. Using his excellent balance, he climbed the bedpost silently, keeping absolutely still on any movement from the man below. Tristan glanced up and saw the faded silver chain. He grabbed the chain, yet was startled when a dog barked outside. In his surprise, he dropped the amulet. Time stopped, and Tristan couldn't grab the falling object quick enough. With his excellent reflexes, he caught the chain, yet the main portion smacked Soren on the nose, waking him instantly. Adrenaline kicked in, allowing Tristan to immediately evade the man's grasp. With a great bellow of rage, Soren gave chase without delay. However, the young prince was much quicker than the old man, and he easily rolled, tumbled, and dodged his way down the stairs and out of the house. Immediately after the boy reached the outside, the spirit collapsed the house by shattering the pillars, locking the man inside. Despite the alert of the old man, Tristan had the amulet, and with its abilities he had been granted before. With this, he took off running back to his homeland. With his speed, he can easily run as fast and tireless as a horse. The old man, Soren, was not finished, however. Since the spirit reactivated its magic, Soren found his strength again, and so could bust out of his demolished house. With that, he mounted his horse and gave chase. While passing through the forest, Soren had caught up to the fleeing prince. To slow him down, the spirit had a tree fall in the path of the horse, forcing the old man to go on foot. The chase continued since both could run at a similar pace. When they reached the river, Tristan gave an extra burst of speed and easily leapt over the gap. Meanwhile, the spirit once again intervened, widening the river so the man had to swim across. Soren persistently followed, yet was surprised to find that he was exhausted. His copy of the magic item proved to be weaker than intended. Cut off from the source, it did little to rejuvenate him, filling him with exhaustion. They finally reached the mountain pass. Once Tristan passed through, the spirit triggered a rock slide to finish the evil man. In the ensuing chaos, their pursuer was borne off the cliff. To make sure he stayed that way, the spirit cut off his magic as Soren hit the ground, killing him. With this, the spirit liberated the prince. While walking back towards the city, the prince washed himself of the filth of his prison. The spirit then provided him with an Armani suit for his triumphant return. It even gave him a Lamborghini. As he entered the city, he was provided with a grand procession of police cars to clear the way back to the mansion. It turned out that the king had been worried sick, and in his relief hosted this marvelous event. At the end of this procession, a crowd awaited his arrival at his home, and he saw his love, Serena. She was no longer avoiding his gaze. Her eyes shone with pleasure and deep longing. He then approached her and told her of his great love for her and presented her with the amulet which now had such great meaning to him. She smiled, saying, "This is perfect. This is how I always hoped it would be. I love you too, Tristan." With that, she finally took him up on that date. 2 years later, they were married and still as happy as ever. Spirit kept its loyalty to Tristan, never leaving his side. When King eventually died, Prince Tristan became the head of the company. He soon made Serena his vice president, and they ran King Media happily and blissfully until the end of their days. And so ends The Thief Prince. Thank you so much for listening.